You know that sinking feeling when you realize the person you trusted most was just playing you? That's exactly what happened to me. When I first met Jace, he came across like the kind of man I thought only existed in movies. He had that warm smile that made people lean in closer, and he knew exactly how to make someone feel seen. From the beginning, he carried himself with a quiet confidence, the kind that made me feel safe just standing next to him. He knew how to tell stories that drew me in, how to listen like I was the most interesting person in the room. We spent evenings driving with the windows down, music spilling through the car, and he'd reach for my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. He'd bring me coffee on mornings I didn't expect it, tuck little notes into my bag, and promise me he wanted forever with me. I believed him, because who wouldn't believe someone who went out of their way to show affection so thoughtfully? The early days felt like I had finally found someone who matched me, someone who actually cared. When Jace spoke about the future, it was always we. We would travel, we would buy a house, we would build a life together. Hearing him talk like that filled me with a comfort I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I let myself think I could stop guarding my heart. Still, there were moments I brushed off too quickly. Sometimes, his compliments would slip into comparisons that left me puzzled. He'd say things like, "You're nothing like the girls I dated before, and that's a good thing." And I'd laugh it off, trying not to read too much into it. Other times, I'd catch his expression when his phone buzzed, as if he was torn between answering it and ignoring it. If I asked, he'd joke that I was overthinking or tease me for being curious. And every time I chose to believe him. It's strange how easily love can mute your instinct. I told myself not to create problems where none existed, not to ruin a good thing with suspicion. He was attentive, he was sweet, he was everything I thought I wanted. I convinced myself the little knots in my stomach were nothing more than me being scared of something real. For a while it worked. I silenced those doubts, let his charm outweigh the questions I carried. But deep down I felt it, a quiet pull telling me something wasn't as solid as it seemed. And as much as I tried to ignore it, small cracks had already started to appear, cracks I didn't want to look at too closely. It didn't take long before things with Jace started to feel different. At first, it was small details, the kind you almost convince yourself don't matter. He'd tell me he had to run errands on the weekend, or that his friends needed him, and he'd be gone for hours. Sometimes he wouldn't answer my calls, then later show up with a casual excuse like his phone had died, or he'd lost track of time. None of it sounded impossible, but after it kept happening, I couldn't ignore the unease it left in. What really started to bother me was how often Marissa's name found its way into our conversations. She wasn't just some random person. She was his ex, someone he claimed was completely in the past. But she lingered in his stories. He'd bring her up when I least expected it, talking about places they used to go or things she used to do. Sometimes he would phrase it like a compliment to me, saying things like, "You're so much more laid back than Marissa ever was," or, "Marissa never supported me the way you do." On the surface, it sounded like he was praising me, but underneath, it felt like he was measuring me against someone else. Every time her name came up, I felt a small sting. I didn't want to admit it, but it was as if he wasn't truly done with her. When I finally asked him about it, hoping for reassurance, he brushed it off with a laugh. He told me I was reading too much into things, that I was just being sensitive. Sometimes he'd even joke, "Don't be jealous, you've got me now." The way he said it always made me feel like I was the one in the wrong for even asking. Even though his answers never sat right with me, I kept trying to push my worries down. I wanted to believe him, wanted to think I was just imagining things. After all, he still acted like the caring boyfriend most of the time. He still held my hand, still made plans with me, still spoke about the future. It was confusing, like half of him was fully present with me, and the other half was somewhere else I couldn't reach. The more I tried to ignore it, the stronger that quiet voice inside me became. Something about the way he lit up whenever Marissa's name came up, or the way he grew defensive when I asked simple questions, told me there was more going on than he let me see. My instincts whispered that I wasn't wrong, that something was off. But instead of listening to that voice, I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. I told myself love required trust, and trust meant believing his words over my suspicions. One night, while Jace thought I was in the other room, I caught the sound of his voice carrying through the house. He was on the phone, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. Something about his tone made me pause. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the words that slipped out of his mouth froze me in place. "Yeah, man, it's working. Marissa's noticing. Gianna's been perfect for making her jealous." My chest tightened like someone had punched the air out of me. In that moment, everything I had doubted, every little uneasy feeling, suddenly made sense. I wasn't his girlfriend in the way I believed. I was a placeholder, a tool in some twisted plan to win back the woman he couldn't let go of. The laughter in his voice only deepened the cut. He wasn't ashamed, he was proud. I leaned against the wall, barely able to process what I had just heard. My mind raced through every memory, the long drives, the sweet gestures, the promises. All the moments that had felt so real to me were nothing more than bait for someone else. I wanted to burst into the room, scream at him, demand answers, but my body wouldn't move. Instead, I stood there, silent, my heart breaking and my anger rising with every second he kept talking. It felt like the floor had disappeared under me. I had trusted him completely, built dreams with him, only to learn I was never more than a strategy. The betrayal burned in a way I hadn't felt before. Love turned into humiliation, and humiliation twisted into fury. But even as my emotions boiled, something inside me told me to stop. If I confronted him right then, he would deny it, twist it, or find a way to make me doubt myself again. I knew how smooth he was with words, how easily he could flip the story. I didn't want another lie, I wanted the truth. And I wanted to be ready when I finally faced him. So I swallowed the urge to storm in. I let him keep talking while I memorized his words. Every smug sentence burned into my memory. I told myself I would not be the clueless girl he thought I was. If he saw me as a pawn, then I'd make sure he realized I was far more than that. That night, lying next to him while he slept, I stared at the ceiling and felt the weight of it all. My heart hurt, but my resolve grew stronger. This wasn't over. He thought he was in control, but he had no idea what was coming. A few days later, I got the confirmation I didn't want but needed. Jace had left his laptop open on the table before heading to take a shower. At first, I told myself not to look. I hated the idea of snooping, but the memory of that phone call kept echoing in my mind. My hands shook as I sat down in front of the screen, telling myself I'd only check for peace of mind. Deep down, I already knew what I would find. The messages were right there, a thread between him and one of his closest friends. My stomach turned as I read the words. Just give it time, man. Marissa's already noticing. She'll come crawling back soon enough. Another line made my blood boil. Gianna's perfect for this. She doesn't ask much, easy to control. Not like the others. My heart sank as I scrolled through more. He had been mocking me, painting me as nothing more than a stand-in, someone he could use until his real prize showed up again. The worst part was the way he described me, not as a person he cared about, but as some temporary filler. Each line chipped away at whatever feelings I still had left for. Humiliation washed over me like a wave. I felt stupid, like I'd been blind while he played me in the most heartless way possible. All the affection he'd shown me, the future he painted for us, it was all a performance, an act for Marissa's benefit. And while I had been giving him my trust, he had been laughing about it behind my back. For a few minutes, all I could do was sit there, staring at the cruel words glowing on the screen. Tears threatened, but anger held them back. My chest ached, but underneath the pain, something steadier started to grow. I realized I had a choice. I could stay broken, let him get away with it, or I could take control in a way he wouldn't expect. That moment changed everything for me. I stopped seeing myself as the victim of his lies. Instead, I began to think about how he needed to feel the weight of what he had done. He believed he was clever, that he was untouchable, that I'd never find out. But now that I knew the truth, he wasn't the one holding the power anymore. I closed the laptop before he came out of the bathroom and sat quietly, my mind racing. I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of watching me break. If he wanted to play games, then I'd show him what it felt like to lose at his own. After reading those messages, my view of Jace completely shifted, but I didn't let him see it. On the outside, I acted like nothing had changed. I smiled when he talked, laughed at his jokes, and held his hand like always. To him, I was still the caring girlfriend who never doubted him. Inside, though, something was different. I was no longer attached in the same way. Every sweet word he spoke sounded hollow. Every touch felt like a trick. I stopped asking where he went on weekends or why he stayed out late. Instead of questioning him, I nodded along, letting him believe I trusted him blindly. The less I pressed, the more relaxed he became, and that told me everything. He thought I had no idea what was going on, and that gave me the space to prepare myself. Little by little, I pulled back. Not in ways he'd notice right away, but in ways that protected me. I stopped sharing my secrets with him, stopped telling him about my day in detail, stopped looking at him like he was the center of my world. I still went through the motions, but my heart was no longer invested. Each step away gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt before. At night, when he thought I was asleep, I lay there planning. I didn't want a messy fight or another round of love. I wanted him to feel the sting of losing what he thought he had control over. I wanted him to realize he wasn't the clever one in this story. He had used me to make someone else jealous, but I decided I would use his arrogance against him. I started saving pieces of myself he couldn't reach anymore. My patience, my energy, my love. I gave those things back to myself instead of pouring them into him. Every day, it became easier to smile without actually feeling anything. The detachment grew quietly, and it gave me strength. What he didn't know was that I was building to something. I wasn't going to just walk away silently and let him believe he had won. I wanted him to look me in the eye and realize he had underestimated me from the start. He thought I was a pawn, but I was preparing to be the one who ended the game. Waiting for the right moment took discipline. I had to bite my tongue when his lies slipped through, had to hold steady when my anger pushed to the surface. But the patience was worth it. The more time passed, the more confident I became in what I needed to do. He would never see it coming, and that was the point. Jace's behavior started to shift in ways that made his intentions clearer than ever. He began taking me places where he knew Marissa might show up, restaurants he once went to with her, gatherings where her friends would be. At first, I went along quietly, playing my role, but it didn't take long before I saw what he was trying to do. Every move was designed to put me on display, like I was some kind of trophy he could parade around. At one dinner, I caught the way Marissa's face tightened the moment she saw us walk in. Her smile was polite, but her body language told the truth. She wanted nothing to do with him. She barely looked in his direction, and when she did, it wasn't longing. It was annoyance. Watching her made something click for me. He was so convinced his plan was working, yet the very person he was chasing wanted him gone. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. Instead, it deepened my anger. I realized I was being dragged into his obsession, forced to play a part in his pathetic attempt to win someone back who had already moved on. I wasn't just humiliated, I was fed up. I had been patient, waiting, pretending not to notice. But patience has a limit, and mine had run out. I started to think about where and how I would end it. I didn't want a shouting match in public or a private breakup he could twist later. I wanted something final, something undeniable. The perfect chance came when Jace invited me to dinner with his family. He always liked to show me off in front of them, painting me as the girl who adored him. The idea of him bragging about me while hiding the truth made my blood boil. That's when I knew that dinner would be the stage for everything to come out. In the days leading up to it, I kept my calm. I let him keep believing he was in control. Every time he talked about how proud his parents were of us, I smiled and nodded, all the while planning exactly what I would say when the time came. It wasn't about embarrassing him for fun. It was about stripping away the mask he wore so well, making sure the people closest to him saw who he really was. By the time the night arrived, I felt strangely steady. My hands didn't shake, and my voice didn't waver. I had already rehearsed it in my head, how I'd sit through the meal, let him talk himself up, then calmly lay the truth on the table. He thought he had been using me, but in reality, I had been setting the trap. And once I sprung it, there would be no going back. The night of the dinner, everything unfolded just as I expected. Jace was in his element, sitting at the table with his parents, telling stories about how thoughtful I was, how I always stood by him, how lucky he felt to have me. He wore that proud smile, the one that made him look like the perfect boyfriend. I sat quietly, letting him go on, watching him perform in front of the people who admired him most. His mother nodded with approval, his father laughed along, and Jace basked in the praise. It was almost impressive how smoothly he played his role, like he believed his lies so deeply he had convinced himself they were true. But I wasn't fooled anymore. I waited until he finished boasting before I spoke. With a steady voice, I told them I had something important to share. At first, Jace grinned, thinking I was about to add to his story. Instead, I laid the truth on the table. I explained that I knew why he was with me, that it was never about love or partnership. I told them I had overheard him bragging about using me to make Marissa jealous. His parents froze, their smiles fading as they turned to him in disbelief. Jace tried to laugh it off, but I didn't give him the chance. I repeated the exact words I had read in his messages, the cruel lines where he called me temporary and easy to control. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. His mother's hand dropped from her fork, his father's face hardened, and Jace's smirk collapsed. He stammered, searching for excuses, but nothing came out right. The confidence he had carried all evening vanished in an instant. His parents looked at him not with pride, but with disappointment. I didn't raise my voice or shed a tear. I kept my composure, because I wanted him to see that he hadn't broken me. After a moment, I thanked his parents sincerely for the meal. I stood up, pushed in my chair, and wished them a good evening. Without looking back at Jace, I walked out with my head held high. There was no scene, no drama, no begging. Just the truth, laid bare in front of the people whose opinion mattered most to him. The air outside felt lighter, like I had finally stepped out of a cage I didn't realize I was in. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't carrying his lies on my shoulders. I knew that night marked the end, and I didn't need to say another word to him to make it clear. He had lost, and I had walked away on my own terms. News of that dinner didn't stay inside the walls of Jace's parents' home for long. It didn't matter that I had left quietly. People talk, and soon enough, the truth was everywhere. His relatives heard about what I revealed, His close friends whispered about it among themselves, and eventually it circled back to Marissa. When Marissa found out, her reaction was clear. She wanted nothing to do with him. She was disgusted that he would drag someone else into his mess just to get her attention. From what I later heard, she cut ties for good, telling him she couldn't even recognize the person he had become. The one woman he had been chasing all along now shut the door in his face without hesitation. Jace didn't handle it well. Instead of admitting what he had done, he tried to spin the story. He told anyone who would listen that I had exaggerated, that I was trying to embarrass him. He painted himself as the victim of a bitter breakup, but his excuses fell flat. Too many people already knew the details. The words I had repeated at that dinner had stuck, and no one could ignore them. One by one, the people who used to back him up started distancing themselves. Friends stopped inviting him out. Family members who once praised him grew cold. His reputation, the image he worked so hard to protect, unraveled quickly. Everywhere he turned, the respect he craved was gone. While he scrambled to control the damage, I focused on something else entirely, myself. I signed up for therapy sessions, needing a place to untangle everything I had been through. Talking about it openly helped me find clarity I didn't realize I was missing. I started investing time in things I had set aside for painting, running in the mornings, cooking meals that I actually enjoyed. I also reconnected with people I hadn't seen in months, friends I'd drifted away from while wrapped up in Jace's world. To my surprise, those friendships picked up again with warmth, and new connections grew too. Slowly, my life began to feel like my own again. I wasn't defined by being Jace's girlfriend or his pawn. I was just me, Gianna, living for herself. Watching his world collapse from a distance didn't bring joy, but it did bring closure. I didn't need to gloat or remind him of what he lost. Life had already done that for me. He had wanted control, but in the end, he lost everything he had tried to hold on to. Meanwhile, I found myself standing stronger than I ever thought I could. It wasn't long before Jace showed up again, this time without the same confidence he used to carry. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in the way a person does when life has worn them down. He reached out, asking if we could talk, and I agreed, not because I wanted him back, but because I wanted to hear what he had to say. When we met, his words tumbled out in a rush. He admitted he had made mistakes, said he didn't realize how much he needed me until I was gone. He even tried to promise that things would be different if I gave him another chance. It was clear he had nothing left to hold on to, so he was reaching for the one person he thought might still save him. But I wasn't that person anymore. Listening to him didn't bring back the old feeling. Instead, it reminded me how far I had come. I told him I wasn't angry, that I didn't hate him, but I also made it clear I was finished. There was no going back to what we were. He looked stunned, as if he believed a few apologies would undo everything. I stood firm, calm, and steady, and when I walked away, it wasn't with bitterness, it was with freedom. After that, I heard pieces of what happened in his life. Without me, without Marissa, and without the support of friends who once defended him, he struggled to keep up appearances. At work, his charm only went so far. The same manipulative habits he had used in relationships bled into his job, and eventually, it caught up to him. I learned that he was let go after his co-workers reported him for dishonest behavior. Whatever reputation he had left crumbled completely. It felt like watching the final act of a play I was no longer part of. He had thought he could juggle lies forever, but the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. Karma didn't just brush against him. It consumed every corner of the life he had built on manipulation. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward. His downfall wasn't my victory. It was just proof that life balances itself out. I didn't need revenge in the way I once thought. Simply walking away, refusing to be part of his chaos, had been enough. He lost what mattered most to him: respect, stability, the chance at real love, while I gained peace. Seeing how it all unfolded only confirmed that I had made the right choice. I hadn't needed to destroy him. He had done that all on his own. And as his world fell apart, mine was just beginning to rebuild in a way that was stronger and truer than before. Looking back on everything, I can finally see how much has changed since those days with Jace. What once felt like the end of my world turned out to be the beginning of something better. At first, I carried so much pain, convinced I would never feel whole again. But with time, I learned that the heartbreak wasn't the final chapter. It was simply the moment that pushed me toward growth I didn't know I needed. The girl who once sat in silence, questioning her worth while her partner lied to her, isn't the same woman who stands here now. I learned that being betrayed doesn't make you weak. It only shows you who doesn't deserve a place in your life. Jace thought he had stripped me of my dignity, but all he did was hand me the chance to rebuild myself from the ground up. I didn't rush into someone else's arms to fill the emptiness he left. I chose to sit with myself, to figure out who I was outside of him. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't defined by a relationship. I was free to explore my own interests, make decisions without worrying about pleasing anyone, and surround myself with people who valued me. That freedom turned into strength, and that strength grew into wisdom. The lessons were harsh, but they stayed with me. I now know the importance of listening to my instincts, of not silencing that inner voice when something feels wrong. I know the danger of ignoring red flags just because I want to believe the best in someone. And most importantly, I know the difference between love that nourishes and love that manipulates. Those truths came at a cost, but they are mine to keep, and I wouldn't trade them. Jace lost more than just me. He lost the chance to prove himself as someone capable of honesty and loyalty. His downfall was his own doing, but it taught me something powerful. You don't have to fight to bring someone like that down. Life has a way of balancing things out. Watching him lose the respect of his family, the trust of his friends, and the stability of his job showed me that karma doesn't miss a step. When I think about him now, I don't feel anger. I don't feel pity either. What I feel is distance, like looking at a past life that no longer belongs to me. He tried to break me for the sake of winning someone else back, but in the end, he lost everything that gave his life meaning. And me? I walked away lighter, wiser, and stronger than ever. Jace thought he could break me to win someone else back. But in the end, he lost everything, and I gained myself. Betrayal pushed me toward revenge. Revenge opened the door for karma, and karma left me with peace. That is the closure I never expected but always needed.